Welcome back. Today we are going to be learning how to read chord charts and then just some beginner chords that are good to learn when you're just starting out with guitar. So yeah, let's get into it. So first off, when you're looking at a chord chart or a chord block, it kind of looks weird because when we look at a guitar and when we play guitar, it goes like this and it just looks like a bunch of lines going like vertically. Horizontal. Anyways, basically a chord chart is like when you flip your guitar. So we'll make sure we get that in the frame. So basically you'll see like there's the nut of the guitar up here, and above the nut of like when you read a chord chart, you'll have like, usually it will say the like name of the chord, like C, G, A minor, whoops. And then the strings or the lines that you will see are the strings. So you have your high E up here, and then your low E. And basically, you will see dots and X's and circles and all that. If you see any X's or like kind of like ovally shaped hollow things, the X means that you do not play the string when you strum it, and then the O means it's like an open string, like there's no like none of your fingers are on the strings, and I'll show you. We'll get more depth in that later. And then basically the little dots that you see with like sometimes they'll have a number in them, sometimes they won't. That just means like the string. So if you see like, we're gonna use C as the example, you'll see a dot on the second string first fret here. Sometimes there'll be a 1 for first finger, because we have 5 fingers, right? Your thumb's never on the string, just these 4 fingers. Right? Okay, we're just going to flip back up here. So you will see that there is a dot on the second string, first fret. Then there'll be another dot on the, what string is that? 4th string, 2nd fret. And then one on the 3rd fret, 5th string. Now, some chord charts have the X's or O's like above where the nut is. Some do, some don't. If there is an X on the like 6th string and it shows you that, that means you only play the 5 strings. So you will not strum the 6th string, just the first 5. Sometimes there will be O's too. That means like there would be an O on the 1st string, on the 3rd string, and then on the, not on the 6th string, but on those 2 strings because there's no fingers on the strings. So again, if I flip it this way, you can see, I bet if I had like a sticky tack to show by each finger, but it would look like that. It's basically just telling you where to put your fingers backwards, kind of, because we look at a guitar like this, but the chord chart is like this. So yeah, that's basically how you read a chord chart. They're also like bar chords where they'll be like, I know this sounds confusing. Well, I'm back over here. There'll be a line over like the 1st fret. That just means you put your first finger on, like, you bar it, basically. Or if it's over 2 strings, like there's a dot over 2 strings, that also means you just bar it. It gets easier once you learn, and if there's no like circles or X's or numbers, but just the dots and like the lines, like the chord chart, then eventually you'll just get used to like learning what like fingers go where, basically. So obviously C is one of our main basic chords, which I showed you how to play. There's there's probably so many different ways to play C, but 2 easy ways to play it are just C. And we also see C add 9 quite a bit. C add 9, we have our pinky on the 3rd fret, 1st string, our ring finger on the 2nd string, 3rd fret, and then our 2nd finger here on the 5th string, 3rd fret, and then our 1st finger on the 4th string, 2nd fret. And we have a G. G is a famous chord. You need to know G. With G, you keep your 2 fingers down here locked in, They're like the locked in chords, or like easy 4-chord country chords that lots of artists use, that because they're like easy and you can just flip around easy. So C at 9, G, you just move these 2 fingers up. So your first finger is on the 5th string 2nd fret, and your second finger is on the 6th string 3rd fret. For G, you always strum all 6 strings. For C's, you only strum the 5. There are other different ways to play G. You could play a G sus4, or you could also play a G7. So G sus4 is where you have your first finger on the 2nd string 1st fret, and then your 3rd finger on the 6th string 3rd fret. That's a G sus4. And then G7 is where you're going to move your first finger down a string and then add your second finger on the 5th string 2nd fret. That's G7. But then like we have A minors, E's, D's, and F's. So A minor, again, same as the C, you only play the 5 strings. A minor. First string here on the 2nd string 1st fret, our 2nd finger on the 4th string 2nd fret, and our 3rd finger on the 3rd string 2nd fret. We also have like an A7 where you would lift your 3rd finger off. Or we have an A where you would, like this is A minor, you would take off your first finger and add your pinky on the 2nd string 2nd fret. Different variations of A. Then we can move, if we are at our A minor here, we can move all our fingers up a string, and we have an E, where our first finger here is on the 3rd string 1st fret, our 2nd finger on the 5th string 2nd fret, and our 3rd finger on the 4th string 2nd fret. We play all the strings for that chord. But again, like we have different variations, we can lift off our first finger and we have an E minor. And then you can play an E minor 7, which is another one of like the locked in chords. We usually have a G, C at 9, and then if you move your fingers basically where your E minor was, just in a different placement, you have an E minor 7. First finger on the 5th string 2nd fret, 2nd finger on the 4th string 2nd fret, 3rd finger on the 2nd string 3rd fret, and our 3rd finger, and then our 4th finger, or our pinky, will be on the 3rd fret 1st string. You strum all the chords, strum all the strings. Now we have a bunch of variations of D as well. We could play our D here, where we have our first finger on the 3rd string 2nd fret, our 2nd finger on the first string 2nd fret, and then our 3rd finger on the 3rd fret 2nd string. And for any variation of D, you only play 4 strings. So if you see an X on like the 6th and 5th, that's telling you that you only play the 4. You could also play a D minor. There's so many different variations of D, and just of any chord. You have your minor and your major and your sus4s and sus2s. There's so many different chords, like, and then you get into a whole different thing of bar chords, which is a different video. But then lastly, let's just go over a few basic F chords. So F sus2 is honestly probably the easiest of the Fs, where you're barring your first finger here on the 1st and 2nd string of the 1st fret, and then your 3rd finger on the 4th string 3rd fret. Now it may be confusing, like, well, that's not your 3rd finger. You're only having 2 fingers playing the chord. But if you think about it, if we have our hand, it's kind of weird. We have our thumb. This is our first finger, our like index finger is our first finger. Our middle finger would be considered our 2nd finger, ring finger 3rd, and then pinky would be our 4th. So if you ever see numbers on the dots, index 1, middle 2, ring 3, pinky 4. That makes sense. F sus2, You can also play an F like this. But there's so many different ways to play F. My favorite way is sus2. So I'd just say the beginner way to play F, sus2. And then again, an F bar chord is probably the next best thing you got. But again, F sus2. Now you also have a bunch of B chords, but personally B chords are not like beginner friendly chords like our C's and our G's and our D's. So I think I'm just gonna leave it at that. That was a lot of stuff to cover in this video, and if you want to learn about different chords, minor, major, bar chords, just let me know in the comments. But yeah, see you at the next one.